Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
Yeah,
so I think it's a little more complicated than that, in the sense when I work in my business consulting role with these businesses, what they don't do is systematize their incoming leads to understand how to deal with them, like Aaron said, across every input here. And so what ends up happening is some amount of leads get responded to quickly, but others get passed to Joe, and Joe is on vacation or whatever. They haven't really thought through this process.
They don't have a process.
They don't have a process. And without a process, you're going to fail at lead response, regardless of what tool you're using, even if you're using Leadferno. Because even there, you get segmented needs. Somebody you can respond to quickly, somebody you got to answer some questions before they go out to with a real response. And so the problem is, as much, the tool is certainly a baseline thing, but then they have to do the second thing, which is what are the categories of people that are, and how can we maximize a response to each of them? So it's harder than just, you got a lead, answer it. Do you know what I mean? In that sense.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you think there's any, you said something really interesting earlier in this pod about, business owners sort of prioritizing phone calls as higher quality leads, in air quotes, just by default. Do you think there are other higher quality leads from a business owner standpoint, like a DM on Instagram or a Facebook message or whatever? Like, is the website just sort of the forgotten channel, like, for so many business owners, or is it to what extent does that play a role, or do you think it's really like all about just not having a process in place?
Yeah, I would say what most of them really covet are just, they want them to be overly qualified, right? They really want it to be a slam dunk type of lead. So the ones that they end up then valuing the most are if they have a multi-step form, something that goes all the way in their scheduling, things like that, right? They really look at like, if I don't have to interact, if I get all the information up front, if they commit to something like scheduling a call, a meeting, an on-site visit, whatever that might be, like that's ultimately what I'm after. I don't want to have something where I have to do a little bit of work or engage to do it or whatever else. I think it all kind of goes back to, there's always been this underlying, the internet should make everything easier for you, right? And instead of looking like, it can create more opportunities for you, you still might have to do some of the same things that if someone walked into your business or called you on the phone or whatever else, and you have to do it through a different channel, it should be regarded the same. But I think that's the biggest things that a lot of times they look to covet. What we try to do, which, you can always get into, is it a wise business decision or not? But we try to change their mind into, you should be trying to start as many conversations as possible. And then your business should be figuring out how, with efficiency and process, can we take these and make the most of these conversations. No different than you're going after the right type of web traffic, and you're using your content to get them into a point where they're in a conversion. And I think from a high level, Greg, to what you and Mike were kind of pointing out and discussing, and I wholeheartedly agree with what you said, Mike. I often quote, and I wish I knew where to attribute, but a fool with a tool is still a fool. And that definitely holds true. But if I had to make one bold, and it's obviously a bias statement, I just think email is shit. And all of these forms are going into your email that are pounded by spam messages, cold sales, vendors, customer emails, whatever else, that new leads do not stand out at all. And people's email, your email app, you're not enabling push notifications because it would just be a flurry of emails. You don't want to see that. So you're already treating email as like this locked away thing that you go and check, possibly reluctantly, unless there's something that you're looking for. And if there's something you're looking for, you're going and looking for that. And you're bypassing the other 10, 15, 20 messages that might not be in there, and you might not come back to it. So that's a lot of my theory is like a change that needs to happen is stop sending these leads into email that is already unbelievably congested. You need to send it into another channel like SMS where it stands alone as a lead.
So you've got sort of three things going on. You've got business owner skepticism about the quality of leads. You've got the lack of process, and then you've got use of email as the primary contact tool which may only be checked occasionally. Somebody is just is on the job, or only checks, a doctor or a medical healthcare professional, maybe with patients or with clients, so they're not checking email all the time. So these sort of things, it sounds like, are the sources of some of the stats that you're referring to.
Yep, for sure. And like, to where this stands out, right, is what Mike was alluding to in breaking down. All right, we have 17 hours and 49 minutes as an average. So let's take a look at some of the like early breakdowns as who's responding well to these leads. Only 3.1% responded within the first 5 minutes, right? The best one that we had, the first lead response was 2 minutes. So we saw a very small group fit into that window. And previous studies have shown that like after 5 minutes, the chance of converting a lead like degrades by 80%. So we can see that this like instant response or an instant touch point and getting with someone while their motivation is still strong and it's on their mind and everything else is important. But we see, a large misalignment. If we jump to the next block of like 6 to 30 minutes, 4% were responded to in that time frame. Half an hour to an hour, 3.5%, 4% at 1 to 2 hours, and then it finally jumped up a little bit. 9.7% responded in 2 to 4 hours. But when we zoom out, over 75% of the first responses were after 4 hours. So that just showed like this window of like responding within a half day, within 4 hours, is just not even close to happening. And, I'll point out, we did all of these submissions in the morning. We gave them that day to respond to. We weren't doing these at 5 p.m. and, we caught the person when they were leaving. We didn't do them on Fridays. Like we set them up with every opportunity in their normal business day and flow to take advantage and respond to that, to show us their best, not take advantage of their worst.
Well, in a real world context, often what's going on, especially in something like home services or professional services even, is that people are contacting multiple providers, right? I'm going to pick 3, or I'm going to go out to 2, or whatever the number is. And I'm going to send out this missive to people and say, hey, I'm looking for this. Can you help me, or tell me the price? And so the one that responds the fastest typically gets the business. Isn't that there are other variables involved, right? But isn't that your general based on your prior research? Yep.
Other studies have completely showed that first to contact, like overwhelmingly, is the one who's going to win that lead. So responding fast and being there fast and starting to put their worries, concern, their need to ease definitely gets you out in front.
Well, and it's like Google and Yelp do these sort of multiple default now, send out your request to multiple providers, right? So if you go on Yelp, which is the one I'm most familiar with, and you're looking for HVAC or somebody like that, you do their RFP process, and they will default to sending it out to a broad group of leads, which is part of their business model. But in that context, you really need to be quick, because other people are going to get there first, and you're in your lead, right? I may think I'm sending it to Aaron Wyke, home heating repair, but it's also going out to 10 other guys, and those people are going to get there first if you don't respond. And 4 hours is too long. I don't necessarily want something in 2 minutes, but it's really got to be within a reasonable time frame. It's sort of like reviews and responding to reviews. People writing critical reviews have an expectation that they're going to get a response within a certain period of time. And if you don't fulfill that, you disappoint them and cause problems for yourself.
And we hear
that I like it. Oh, better.
I was going to say, we hear that frustration in the home services industry, especially from the sites like Thumbtack and Angie's and things like that, where there is more of they blast the lead to X amount, and how fast you respond and things like that definitely come into play with it.
I was going to say, the thing that I like about Leadferno as a consumer, or would like about Leadferno if I were engaging with a contractor who was using it, is the asynchronicity of text messages. So like, there isn't like, it's nice for me to see like, oh, they responded, like they're on the ball, right? But like, I don't have the pressure of getting back to them right away as a consumer, whereas I probably wouldn't. That's like, even as a consumer, I'm not checking my email 24/7. And so through your system, Aaron, which you can kind of convert the sort of multi-channel input into an SMS output, I think like actually has some benefit to the consumer as well, in terms of like, okay, you can signal to the consumer that you're on it, but you're also not putting pressure on them by calling them on the phone when they're in a meeting or whatever. Like, I think it's a really elegant and compelling solution on kind of both sides. And to your point, like, you've got to show people that you are responsive and get back to them within, a handful of minutes. But it's not like they have that same pressure on their end. So, which they would if you were following up via phone. So.
Yeah, it's such
unlike chat, though, it's persistent also, right? Chat this is the frustrating thing for me with chat, is that you have to go pee, whatever, that you're gone, the website may answer, then wherever whatever reason you have to leave your screen, you leave the screen.
That's the only reason to leave the screen, is to go pee.
Well, for me, it's a growing reason, but let's not go there. It's just the persistence of it, David, I think adds to the elegance as well, right? So that once you've established contact, you're always in touch.
Yeah. As we always point out, chat is a session, which is great, and you can win that and do well, but SMS is a connection because either side can reach out. It is a true two-way. It is fully accessible. And as David, as you pointed out, it's our most manageable piece of communication that we have in being asynchronous. We get push notification, right? It checks all the boxes of visibility, ease of use, manageable, all of those elements.
Well, one of the things we've talked to, I mean, we're sort of coming to the end of the program, but one of the things we've talked to Rand about and we've discussed in other contexts is the importance of building your local brand now, and Google seems to be focused on that as well with sort of the clickstream data. Responding quickly to inbound leads is not in and of itself going to build your brand, but it starts to, being responsive, delivering a good experience. I mean, these are things. There was an Ace Hardware kind of case study that Mary Mellis wrote about that I also put in our newsletter that was really interesting. Their offline way of operating, highly responsive, very service oriented, has benefited them online, right? So they do a great job in the real world. That translates into reviews, loyalty, online conversations, and being, your customer experience, which this is an integral part of, is really important sort of in terms of long-term thinking about your brand and visibility and all those things. I mean, you build it sort of brick by brick, and being responsive in the moment is one of those elements.
Well, these are your first access points into forming an opinion and having a first impression of communication with this business or service or provider. So if you start off with a good impression of that, it's only going to lead into the favor is already there for you as a business as you go to each next step, because you covered your ground on the first one. You were easy to get a hold of. You were responsive, and you were doing it in the channels that I prefer to communicate. So now as you get to things like providing a proposal or a quote or a cost or scheduling or whatever else, they already are looking at you in a good light instead of, I'm already skeptical. And so if this isn't in my favor or whatever else, I'm just cutting bait and going to find someone else. The last section that I wanted to cover and share with you guys has to do with once the business receives it and then their follow-up, right? We talked about if they follow up. So now let's just take and section off the ones that did follow up, that the 60%, not the 40% that failed to follow up at all, and take a look at what that looked like. And I will put out there, we were not responding to any of the follow-ups, right? So it was a normal ghosting. Now we're trying to reach someone who isn't responding. But this is one where I was both really surprised and not surprised. But 65.5% of those that did respond, they responded just once. They were a one and done. We made an attempt to get back to this lead that gave us all their contact info, details, whatever else. And because the stars didn't align that one time and they didn't respond to our email or answer our phone call, and we left a voicemail or sent a text, now we're not doing anything further with that lead. And to me, that was just mind blowing to be that high, that you have this and this is the one attempt you're going to make at it. I'm coming from a world where I do, cold outbound sales to businesses, trying to get on their radar, to tell them about Leadferno, give them a demo and whatever else. I'm going to do 5 to 7 follow-ups on someone that's cold. If someone came to me and said, here's my info, my business, whatever else. I'm not making one attempt. I'm making many attempts. And so we just found, and this, as we went along, 13% made 2 attempts, 8% made 3 attempts, 4% 4 attempts, and just 8% made 5 or more attempts. And the 2 highest we saw, we had one that made 16 and one that made 18. And those were the only 2 that were that high into double digits. And I would say you're probably approaching overkill then. But I did see some really smart ones too, where they're working in a mix and they're using all 3 channels. So they're placing a call, they're sending an email, they're sending a text. They're just doing small check-ins like, hey, are you still interested in solar for your home? Hey, are you still looking to schedule Botox, or would you like a consultation? So they're not using up a lot of energy in their reach outs or requiring a lot from the person to see it. So I think there's definitely some great things there that can be done. And then lastly, just to give an idea, when they're doing those reach outs, I kind of alluded to this, like 71% of these only used one channel. So they might have emailed the customer back, or they got the form and they placed a call, and that's all they did is use that one channel. So they didn't try them through multiple routes. 24% used 2 channels. So they're sending an email and sending a text, or sending a call and a text, and just 4.6% used all 3 channels. And we were giving them our number and our email. They had all this information, so they could use it at will, but they weren't leveraging that at all. And then when it comes down lastly to text messaging, only 9% use text messaging as their first response for an immediate follow-up. And only 20% of the businesses used text at all as a follow-up. So it's still highly underutilized, even though 99% are seen, 98% are opened within the first 3 minutes. Like, the visibility compared to email is off the charts, but they're not using it in their follow-up process.
Yeah, on the multimodal point, I would say as a consumer, I would actually downgrade a business if I filled out a web form and they called me back. That is totally inappropriate from my standpoint.
There's a lot of that.
I would say there is a need to be a little bit more sensitive on the mode of follow-up. Now, at the same time, I would be fine if they followed up via email 4 or 5 times or sent me a couple of texts. But if I'm getting even one phone call from a business who I've submitted a web form to, they're off my consideration list.
I'm not surprised, David. You're the guy who's had a voicemail for years that says, don't leave me a voicemail. I'm not going to listen to it. So
there is always this question, though, of social boundaries, and 16 to 18, attempts. It doesn't seem to be approaching the limit. It seems to me to be well beyond the limit of appropriate social boundary. And, to some extent, there should be obvious opt-in to David's point. Here are the ways I wish that you could, or here are the ways you could reach back out to me. That would be one point. The other would be, to automate this undeclared follow-up. So to some extent, I'm sure that the people that are giving you 2 or 3 things by different mechanisms probably have a Salesforce or something similar in place to do that. And that seems to me, but again, there's this question of balance and appropriateness that I don't know where and what that line looks like. And It probably depends on the relative life importance of the decision and the value of the object, right? That you're looking at.
Yeah.
To me, the smart decision a business can make, I definitely I hear your sentiments, David, and I can agree with those. I also can identify with the business on trying to make the most of that lead. And I think the smart ones, and I saw just a few of them do this, is they use the one channel and then they also let them know on that channel, hey, I am going to try to give you a call because I do want to see if we can help you, right? So then the phone call isn't a surprise. And also, if you're somebody who's anti-phone, then you can text back and be like, no, don't call me. I'm here. Like, we can solve this here. So it does give a little bit of that. Is it maybe 100% compliant for all people? No, but I think if you are intentional and professional about it, you can definitely create easy segues in between using the different channels, giving them a heads up that you're also in those other channels, and you just want to make it easy for them to connect with because you do want to help them. They reached out. I'm doing my job here to be as diligent as possible to follow up with you.
So I still think Mike's solution of requiring, or at least making a choice optional in the form that's the better way to go. Where these channels are acceptable to me, and if you go outside of those boundaries, seller
You're off
you
my
will.
list
So,
forever.
Yeah. And that's why we look at, with our tool, we always say that the power of choice helps conversion. So when people click our button, one of the things that differentiates us is you're not just forced into a text conversation. The business can choose to provide options of, hey, great. Do you want to text us? Do you want to request a call? Do you want to click the call list? Do you want to click to our scheduling form? So we look at that optionality, and when it's in the choice of the consumer, and they can signal what their preferred channel is and how they want this to go, that is definitely very powerful.
So kind of to wrap this up, one of the things that strikes me at a high level is that this is an illustration of a problem that exists in other areas of small business marketing. Is there's a consumer experience and expectation, and then there's the business owner's perception and prioritization of different things. And there's a gap there, right? The business owner doesn't fully understand what's going on with the expectations of the customer, or they're behaving in a way that's inconsistent with customer expectations. And this is true in other areas of small business marketing. How do you, what would you say about that? How do you, is that just a sort of a persistent problem that's going to exist, including in this area that you're working on, or is there any way it's an education problem at its base, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that everybody is trying to do. Well, your customers are saying this, your customers are doing this, so you need to respond in this way. But this seems to be sort of a semi-insoluble problem in the small business world. And I don't want to, open a new extended discussion here, but how do you respond to that? How do you respond to that massive education problem?
Yeah. And we all know changing someone's mindset is probably one of the hardest things to accomplish. But, the things that I just try to point out to when we're talking to businesses, whether they're prospects, customers, is just having the mindset that, hey, I'm asking them and finding out if they understand and know what the value is of a lead to them and a closed deal and everything else, and just really get them anchored to. So what we need to do is create opportunities for you. You love opportunities of the amount of web traffic to your site. And a lot of times you're not caring as much on how much something is turning into leads and whatever else. Like, you need to take that, same approach with what's going on with those conversations. And then what we want to do is give them a tool. We can get you more conversations. We can get your team better tools to manage them more effortlessly. They have saved replies and reminders and all these things that make it easier to engage. And then we give you reporting so you can track how fast are we replying to these things. How many replies does it take until we close and win this lead, or we lose this lead? So I think by giving them and help them understand like this can be done, there's tools and process that can kind of be packaged together to make that happen. That's the route you have to go with it. And then, you just try to create some of those first few hits of dopamine for them, and getting push notifications that I have a new lead, and seeing a customer respond. I love when I hear people like, wow, the customer is really impressed with how fast we responded. And so the process is changing the mindset for them. Like, oh, speed to lead matters. Being easy to work with matters. Giving my team tools so that they can better manage these leads, not miss leads, not have them go into spam. All of that stuff, matters. And that is changing my mindset.
Okay. All right. On that note, thank you, Aaron Wyke. Excellent conversation. Very interesting, and a problem that won't be solved tomorrow, but hopefully incremental improvement over time. So thanks for joining us this week, and thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back next time, as always.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.